My parents missed my baby's funeral to attend my brother's pool party. They said, "It's only a baby. Your brother's celebration is more important." I laid my child to rest alone. They had no clue what I was about to do next. Can you imagine standing completely alone at your own baby's funeral, watching their tiny casket being lowered into the ground, while your parents are off celebrating at your brother's pool party? Because that's my reality. My daughter, Emily, was only 6 months old when SIDS took her from me, and the words my mother whispered to me that day, "It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more," shattered something inside me beyond repair. That day, I knew I had to make them face the horrifying consequences of their choice. I'm Abigail, 29, and growing up, I always knew I was second best. My brother, Jason, now 32, was the golden child from the moment he was born. Our parents, Margaret and Richard, created a family dynamic where his achievements were celebrated with extravagant parties, while mine were acknowledged with obligatory cards, if remembered at all. When Jason made the soccer team in grade school, my parents threw a backyard barbecue with all our relatives. When I was accepted into the honors program that same year, they simply said, "That's nice, Abby," before immediately asking Jason about his upcoming game. This pattern continued throughout our lives. Jason's average grades were praised as efforts of a well-rounded individual, while my straight A's were expected and frankly unremarkable. By high school, I'd accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I focused on building my own life, excelling in academics, and forging friendships with people who actually valued me. I met Michael during my sophomore year of college. He came from a warm, supportive family that honestly felt alien to me at first. The way his parents showed genuine interest in his day, remembered important events, and expressed pride in his accomplishments seemed almost theatrical to me, until I realized this was just what normal family love looked like. Michael and I dated throughout college and married 3 years ago when we were both 27. He's an architectural engineer, and I work as a pediatric nurse. We bought a small starter home about 40 minutes from my parents and an hour from his. The distance from my family was entirely intentional on my part, though I never admitted it to Michael. When we announced our pregnancy, Michael's parents immediately started planning the baby shower, asking about our nursery colors, and sending us articles about childbirth and parenting. My parents responded with, "Oh, that's nice. Did Jason tell you he might get promoted at the firm?" They attended the baby shower my in-laws organized, but spent most of it talking about Jason's recent vacation to the Bahamas. Jason's life had always followed a predictable pattern of success. After college, he joined a prestigious marketing firm, bought a luxury condo, and dated increasingly attractive women. Each achievement was celebrated lavishly by our parents. When he purchased his condo, they helped with the down payment, something they never offered me, despite my student loans. When I mentioned this discrepancy once, my mother simply said, "Jason has a more expensive lifestyle to maintain. You and Michael are more practical people." Emily was born on a snowy January morning. She had Michael's dark hair and my blue eyes. Holding her for the first time, I felt a love so intense it physically hurt. Michael's parents arrived at the hospital within hours, bearing gifts, tears, and so much joy. My parents came the next day, stayed for exactly 45 minutes, and left when my mother remembered she had a hair appointment. Over the next 6 months, Michael's parents visited weekly, sometimes just to give us a break so we could nap or have dinner alone. They took thousands of pictures of Emily, created a special photo album, and constantly told us what a beautiful family we were. My parents visited exactly twice. One visit was 3 weeks after Emily's birth, when my mother's book club friend insisted on seeing the baby. The other was when they were in the area for one of Jason's work dinners. They held Emily awkwardly, as if she were a ticking bomb, and seemed relieved when she started crying, and I took her back. Despite their indifference, I sent them weekly photo updates of Emily's milestones. Her smile, her first time rolling over, her laugh. My mother would occasionally respond with a thumbs-up emoji. My father never responded at all. 2 months before Emily died, Jason announced his engagement to Stephanie, a pharmaceutical sales representative he'd been dating for 8 months. My parents immediately began planning an elaborate engagement party. My mother called me daily with updates about the venue, the menu, and the guest list. The party was scheduled for the same weekend as Emily's dedication at our church, a ceremony my parents had already committed to attending. When I reminded my mother of the conflict, she said, "Oh, we'll have to miss the baby thing. This is Jason's engagement, Abby." That's a once-in-a-lifetime event. A baby dedication only happens once, too, I wanted to say, but I swallowed the words as I had so many times before. A week before Emily died, she developed a slight cold. Nothing serious, just a runny nose and some congestion. I took her to her pediatrician, who assured me it was a minor viral infection that would resolve on its own. Still, I took a few days off work to care for her. By the weekend, she seemed better, eating normally and smiling her gummy smile that always melted my heart. I had no way of knowing those would be our last days together. It was a Tuesday night when our world collapsed. Michael and I had put Emily to bed around 8 p.m. after her evening bottle. She'd been completely normal that day, babbling, playing with her favorite stuffed rabbit, eating well. We had dinner, watched an episode of a show we'd been following, and went to bed around 11. The baby monitor remained silent all night. Too silent. When I woke at 6 a.m. for my early shift at the hospital, something felt profoundly wrong. Emily usually woke around 5 for a feeding. I went to her nursery, the room we'd painted soft yellow with woodland creatures on the walls. In her white crib, surrounded by the stuffed animals given to her by Michael's parents, Emily lay still. Too still. "Emily," I whispered, touching her cheek. It was cold. What happened next exists in my memory as disjointed fragments. My screams waking Michael. His footsteps pounding down the hallway. His hands pushing me aside to perform CPR on our daughter's tiny body. My trembling fingers dialing 911. The dispatcher's calm voice asking questions I could barely comprehend. The arrival of paramedics in our peaceful suburban home. Their grim faces as they continued resuscitation efforts. The ambulance ride with Emily's motionless body. The hospital's bright lights. A doctor with kind eyes delivering the worst news any parent could hear. "I'm so sorry. Your daughter died from what appears to be sudden infant death syndrome." Michael collapsed against the wall. I stood frozen, unable to process the words. This couldn't be real. We'd done everything right. Emily slept on her back in a bare crib. We never used blankets. We kept the room at the right temperature. We'd followed every SIDS prevention guideline. Yet there we were, in a sterile hospital room, being asked if we wanted to hold our daughter one last time. We spent hours with Emily, memorizing her face, holding her cold little hands, kissing her forehead. The hospital chaplain came. A grief counselor spoke to us. Someone mentioned funeral arrangements. The words washed over me without meaning. Eventually, I remembered to call my parents. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I said when she answered, my voice breaking. "Emily died last night. SIDS. We're at the hospital now." There was a pause before she responded. "Oh, Abby, that's terrible." No gasp, no tears, no immediate promise to come right away. Just a flat acknowledgement of the information. "We need to arrange a funeral," I continued, desperate for her to understand, to offer support, to be a mother to me when I needed one most. "Yes, I suppose you do. Let us know the details." That was it. No questions about how we were coping or offers to help with arrangements. Michael's parents, in contrast, were already on their way to the hospital, having dropped everything the moment we called. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork, decisions, and overwhelming grief. Michael and I moved through the world like ghosts, barely eating, barely sleeping. His parents took care of practical matters, contacting the funeral home, ordering flowers, arranging for food after the service. My parents called once to ask when the funeral would be. "Friday at 11 o'clock, I told my mother. "At Greenview Cemetery." "Friday," she repeated. "Oh dear. That's the day of Jason's pool party to celebrate his engagement. We've already committed to that." I thought I'd misheard her. "Mom, this is Emily's funeral. Your granddaughter's funeral." "I understand that, Abby, but we can't cancel on Jason now. All the arrangements are made. Everyone's coming. You understand, don't you?" I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend how my parents could choose a party over their granddaughter's funeral. "No, Mom. I don't understand. Please explain it to me." She sighed, the sound crackling through the phone. "Abby, I know you're upset, but think rationally. It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. Emily was only here for a few months. You can always have another baby. But Jason's engagement is important to his future." The words hit me like physical blows. "It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. You can always have another baby." In that moment, something inside me hardened. The hurt was so profound, it transformed into something else entirely. A cold clarity about who my parents truly were. "I see," was all I could manage to say before hanging up. Michael found me sitting on our bedroom floor, phone still in hand. When I told him what my mother had said, his face contorted with rage. He wanted to call them back, to tell them exactly what kind of people they were, but I stopped him. I felt hollow beyond anger. It doesn't matter, I said. It's always been this way. I just never wanted to admit it. The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear, cruelly beautiful for such a dark day. I stood in front of my closet, staring at the black dress I'd bought the day before, trying to comprehend that I was selecting an outfit to wear to my child's funeral. As we drove to the cemetery, I checked my phone one last time, harboring a desperate hope that my parents had changed their minds. There were no messages from them. Instead, there was a text from Jason. Sorry about the baby. Hope the funeral goes okay. Excited to see everyone at the party later. I turned off my phone. Emily's casket was impossibly small. White with silver handles, adorned with pink roses, it looked like something that should hold a doll, not my child. Standing beside it in the cemetery's Garden of Angels, a section reserved for infants and children, I felt detached from reality. Michael stood beside me, his face pale, his hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. His parents flanked us on the other side, his mother openly weeping, his father steady but red-eyed. Around us gathered friends, colleagues, neighbors, even patient families from the pediatric ward where I worked. My childhood friend, Teresa, had flown in from Chicago. My college roommate, Lily, was there with her husband. The conspicuous absence of my parents and brother created a void that everyone politely pretended not to notice, though I caught the questioning glances, the confused whispers. Michael's mother had placed a protective arm around my shoulders when people asked where my family was, smoothly changing the subject. Pastor David spoke about the brevity of Emily's life, but the depth of her impact. Some souls, he said, accomplish their purpose here on earth quickly. Emily brought joy, love, and a new dimension of humanity to Abby and Michael in her 6 months with them. During the service, my phone vibrated in my purse. I ignored it until after the final prayer, when I checked it briefly to see several Instagram notifications. Jason had posted photos from his pool party. My parents prominently featured, smiling with champagne glasses in hand, celebrating while their granddaughter was being lowered into the ground 3,000 miles away. When it came time for the burial, I nearly collapsed. The physical act of watching that tiny casket descend into the earth made Emily's death real in a way nothing else had. This was final. This was forever. My baby was gone, and I would never hold her again. Never see her grow up, never know who she would have become. Michael's father had to help support him as he threw his handful of dirt onto the casket. Michael's mother held me as I did the same, my entire body shaking with sobs. Around us, others followed suit, murmuring prayers and goodbyes. Later, at our house, people gathered with food and flowers and well-intentioned words that couldn't touch my grief. I moved through the rooms like an automaton, accepting condolences, thanking people for coming, declining offers of food I knew I wouldn't eat. In quiet moments, I caught myself listening for Emily's cries through the baby monitor we hadn't yet put away. Each time, the realization that I would never hear her again hit me anew. That week passed in a haze of grief. I took leave from work. Michael tried to go back after 3 days, but came home early, unable to focus. We moved through our house like ghosts, eating little, sleeping less, talking hardly at all. The silence where Emily's babbling, crying, and laughter should have been was deafening. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. They didn't visit. Michael's parents came daily, bringing food, doing laundry, sitting with us in our grief. They respected our need for space, but made sure we weren't alone for too long. Michael's mother gently suggested grief counseling. His father helped with the mountain of paperwork that follows a death certificates, insurance, medical bills. 7 days after the funeral, my phone rang with my mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but finally did, curious about what she could possibly say. "Abby, how are you?" she asked, her voice casual, as if we'd simply gone a week without talking, as if nothing significant had happened. "My daughter died and was buried without her grandparents present," I replied flatly. "How do you think I am?" "Now, Abby, there's no need for that tone. We're calling to invite you and Michael to Sunday dinner. It would be good for you to get out of the house, don't you think? Jason and Stephanie will be there. They can tell you all about their wedding plans. It might take your mind off things." Take my mind off things? As if my child's death were a minor inconvenience to be distracted from with wedding talk. "I don't think we'll be able to make it," I said. Abby, you can't just shut yourself away. Life goes on. It's been a week already. A week? A week since I buried my daughter, and my mother thought that was sufficient time to move on. I have to go, I said and hung up. Michael found me sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at the wall. When I told him about the call, about my mother's invitation to Sunday dinner to hear about Jason's wedding plans, his expression darkened. They can't be serious, he said. They are, I replied. They absolutely are. Against my better judgment, I agreed to attend the Sunday dinner at my parents' house 2 weeks after Emily's funeral. Michael was reluctant, but I felt a need to see my parents face to face, to understand how they could act as if nothing had happened. We arrived at the suburban colonial home where I'd grown up, the house with the meticulously maintained lawn and the living room that was kept pristine for guests. My mother greeted us with air kisses, careful not to smudge her lipstick. My father nodded from his armchair, barely looking up from his newspaper. Jason and Stephanie sat on the couch, wedding magazines spread before them. Abby, Michael, come in, my mother said. Dinner's almost ready. Jason was just showing us the venue they're considering for the reception. It's absolutely breathtaking. No mention of Emily. No acknowledgement of our loss. No recognition that we might not be in the mood to discuss wedding venues. We sat stiffly on the love seat while Jason dominated the conversation with details about the wedding budget, the guest list, the honeymoon options. My parents hung on every word, offering suggestions and approval. I noticed a new photo on the mantel, Jason and Stephanie at the pool party, the same party they'd chosen over Emily's funeral. During dinner, my mother served roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, Jason's favorite. The conversation revolved entirely around Jason's promotion at work, Stephanie's dress shopping plans, and my parents' ideas for the rehearsal dinner. Finally, during dessert, I couldn't take it anymore. Did Emily's funeral interfere with your pool party? I asked, my voice cutting through a discussion about wedding photographers. The table fell silent. My mother's smile froze on her face. Abby, she said with a nervous laugh. Let's not bring up unpleasant topics at dinner. Unpleasant topics? I repeated. You mean my daughter's death? Your granddaughter's funeral that you skipped. Now, Abby, my father interjected. What's done is done. No sense dwelling on the past. The past? It was 2 weeks ago. Jason rolled his eyes. See, this is why we didn't want to bring it up. You always make everything so dramatic, Abby. I stared at him, incredulous. Dramatic? My baby died. Jason died. And none of you came to her funeral because you were too busy having a pool party. It wasn't just a pool party, my mother said defensively. It was a celebration of Jason and Stephanie's engagement. We'd been planning it for weeks. We couldn't cancel at the last minute. But you could miss your granddaughter's funeral? You could tell me it's just a baby, and that I can always have another one. Michael, who had been silent until now, put down his fork with a clatter. I've sat here trying to be respectful, but this is beyond belief. Do you have any idea what Abby has been through? What we've been through? My mother looked affronted. Of course we do. We're very sorry for your loss. But life must go on, mustn't it? Dwelling in grief isn't healthy. It's been 2 weeks. Michael said, his voice dangerously quiet. 2 weeks since we buried our daughter, and you haven't once asked how we're doing. You haven't offered to help. You haven't acknowledged our pain in any way. My father cleared his throat. We thought it best to give you space. Space? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like indifference. It looks like you care more about Jason's engagement party than your own granddaughter's death. That's not fair, Abby, Jason said. Mom and Dad had already committed to my party. They couldn't be in 2 places at once. They made a choice, Jason, and they chose you, as they always have. A tense silence fell over the table. Stephanie looked uncomfortable, studying her plate intently. Actually, my mother said finally. Several relatives asked where we were during the funeral. We told them we couldn't attend due to health issues. Your father's back, you know. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had lied to the family about why they missed Emily's funeral. They were ashamed enough to lie, but not ashamed enough to actually show up. You lied, I whispered. Well, we could hardly tell them we were at a pool party, could we? My mother replied, as if this were perfectly reasonable. People wouldn't understand. I don't understand, I said, standing up. And I never will. Michael and I left without finishing dessert. In the car, he held my hand as I sobbed, the full weight of my family's betrayal finally hitting me. Over the next month, our marriage strained under the dual burdens of grief and family tension. Michael and I began seeing a grief counselor who specialized in infant loss. During one session, Dr. Patrice asked about our support systems. Michael's family has been incredible, I said. Mine less so. When I explained what had happened, Dr. Patrice's professional demeanor slipped momentarily, revealing shock before she composed herself. That sounds incredibly painful, she said carefully. Have you always felt that your parents favor your brother? This opened a floodgate. Week after week, I unpacked a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle favoritism. The missed dance recital because Jason had soccer practice. The forgotten birthdays because they coincided with Jason's events. The college fund that was half the size of Jason's because girls usually get married and have a husband to take care of them. Dr. Patrice introduced terms like golden child and scapegoat. She explained dynamics in narcissistic family systems. With each session, I gained clarity. This wasn't just about the funeral. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than, culminating in the ultimate dismissal of my most profound loss. What do I do with this knowledge? I asked Dr. Patrice during our session. How do I move forward? That depends on what you want, she replied. Some people choose to maintain limited contact with boundaries. Others find they need a clean break. What feels right to you? I thought about my parents' casual cruelty, about the moments of grief I'd experienced alone while they celebrated my brother. I thought about Emily, how she deserved grandparents who valued her life, who would have moved heaven and earth to be there to honor her death. I think, I said slowly, I need them to understand what they've done. Not just to me, but to Emily, to her memory. Before I can decide about our future relationship, they need to face what happened. And if they can't or won't acknowledge it? Dr. Patrice asked gently. Then I'll have my answer. That night, I told Michael about my decision. I need to make them understand. I need them to feel a fraction of the pain I felt standing at that funeral alone. Michael looked concerned. What are you planning to do? Nothing destructive, I assured him. Just the truth. The truth they've been avoiding for years. I'm worried about you, he admitted. Confronting them might make things worse. Worse than losing our daughter and being told it doesn't matter because it's just a baby? Worse than standing alone at her funeral because a pool party was more important? I don't think that's possible, Michael. He held me close. Whatever you decide, I'm with you every step of the way. That night, I made my decision. The time for silence was over. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. What I wanted was acknowledgement, a recognition of the pain they'd caused, an understanding of the damage they'd done. I wanted my parents to feel the weight of their choice, to see it clearly for what it was. Above all, I wanted to ensure they could never rewrite history, never pretend they'd been supportive when they were anything but. My first step was to decline the invitation to Jason's engagement party. The invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope with gold embossing. My mother's touch, no doubt. I texted a simple response. Michael and I won't be attending. Still grieving our daughter's death. The phone calls started immediately. My mother, then my father, then even Jason. Abby, you can't miss Jason's engagement party. My mother insisted. Family needs to stick together during these events. Family needed to stick together at Emily's funeral, too, I replied. That's different, she said dismissively. This is a happy occasion. I'm not in a place to celebrate right now. It's been over a month, Abby. You need to move on. I ended the call without responding. My father's call was similar, guilt and manipulation wrapped in paternal authority. Jason's call was the most surprising. Mom and Dad are upset you're not coming to my party, he said. Can't you just show up for an hour or something? It's important to them. Was Emily's funeral important to you? I asked. A pause. That's not fair. I barely knew her. Whose fault is that, Jason? You visited her exactly once in 6 months. She was your niece. Look, I'm sorry about what happened. It's awful, but life goes on, right? You and Michael can try again when you're ready. Try again. As if Emily were a failed experiment rather than our daughter. As if any future children could replace her rather than be their own unique people. I won't be attending your party, I said firmly. Congratulations on your engagement. With that immediate pressure handled, I began my research in earnest. I read books about family estrangement, narcissistic family dynamics, and grief. I joined online support groups for parents who had lost children and found, to my sad relief, that my experience wasn't unique. Many others had faced insensitive comments, thoughtless actions, and painful betrayals from family members during their darkest hours. One evening, I pulled out a box from my closet, a collection of evidence I hadn't realized I'd been gathering throughout my life. Birthday cards where my parents had written generic messages, or worse, referenced Jason's achievements. Photos from family events where I stood at the periphery while Jason occupied the center. Text messages showing patterns of neglect and dismissal. I created a timeline documenting the pattern that had culminated in their absence at Emily's funeral. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A way to validate my own experiences and feelings after years of gaslighting and minimization. Next, I reached out to extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins who had attended Emily's funeral and noticed my parents' absence. I didn't volunteer information. I just asked open-ended questions about their understanding of the situation. "We were told your father's back was acting up," my Aunt Judith said during our phone call, "and that your mother needed to stay home to care for him. Did that explanation seem odd to you?" I asked. A pause. Well, yes. I remember thinking it was strange they couldn't make it even for a short time. But who am I to question? Everyone grieves differently. What if they weren't grieving at all? I asked quietly. What if they were at Jason's pool party instead? The silence on the line was deafening. Similar conversations with other relatives revealed the extent of my parents' deception. They told consistent lies to explain their absence, creating a narrative where they were victims of circumstance rather than people who had made a deliberate choice. After 2 months of preparation, I was ready for the final step. I texted my parents. "I'd like to meet with you to discuss moving forward from everything that's happened. Just the 3 of us. This Sunday at 2 p.m. at your house." My mother replied immediately, "Wonderful. I'm so glad you're ready to put this behind us. I'll make your favorite lemon cake." The casualness of her response, the assumption that I wanted reconciliation without acknowledgement, only strengthened my resolve. The night before the meeting, Michael held me as I rehearsed what I wanted to say. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "You don't owe them an explanation for cutting contact if that's what you decide to do." "I'm not doing this for them," I explained. "I'm doing it for me. For Emily. I need to speak my truth, to stand up for her memory. If I just disappear from their lives, they'll rewrite the narrative. They'll tell everyone I was too consumed by grief, too unstable, too unreasonable. I need to make it clear exactly why I'm making this choice." "I understand," he said. "Just remember, whatever happens tomorrow, you have people who love you, who really love you." I held him tighter, grateful for his unwavering support. The next morning, I placed a framed photo of Emily in my purse along with my documentation and a letter I'd written expressing everything I needed to say. I dressed carefully in a blue blouse, Emily's favorite color, I watched, and the necklace with her birthstone that Michael had given me after her birth. "Ready?" Michael asked as I prepared to leave. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had. Immaculate lawn, trimmed hedges, fresh flowers in the window boxes. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering strength for what was to come. Finally, I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse containing Emily's photo and my documents, and walked to the front door. My mother answered, wearing a floral dress and pearls, as if this were a social call rather than a reckoning. "Abby, come in, come in. Your father's in the living room. I've just taken the lemon cake out of the oven." The house smelled of lemon and sugar, a scent that had once meant comfort, but now felt like a mockery. My father sat in his usual armchair, newspaper folded neatly beside him. He stood when I entered, giving me an awkward pat on the shoulder that was the closest he ever came to physical affection. "Good to see you, Abby. You're looking well." I wasn't looking well. I had lost weight, had dark circles under my eyes, and my skin was pale from spending weeks indoors. But my appearance had never been of particular interest to my father. "Let's have some cake," my mother suggested, already heading toward the kitchen. "Then we can talk." "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'd prefer to talk now." My parents exchanged a glance I recognized from childhood, the one that said I was being difficult. "All right," my mother conceded, settling onto the couch. "What did you want to discuss?" I sat opposite them, placing my purse beside me. "I wanted to talk about Emily's funeral and why you weren't there." My mother's smile tightened. "Abby, we've been through this. We had a prior commitment. A pool party," I said flatly. "An engagement celebration for your brother," my father corrected, as if the terminology made a difference. "I'd like to show you something." I reached into my purse and pulled out Emily's photo, a professional portrait we had taken when she was 4 months old. She was wearing a pink dress, her blue eyes bright, a gummy smile lighting up her face. I placed it on the coffee table between us. My parents glanced at it uncomfortably, but said nothing. "This is your granddaughter," I said. "This is Emily. The Emily whose funeral you skipped to attend a pool party. The Emily you referred to as just a baby. The Emily your son, my brother, visited exactly once in her entire life." "Abby," my mother began, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. For as long as I can remember, you have made it clear that Jason matters more than I do. His achievements, his milestones, his happiness always took precedence over mine. I accepted that. I built a life with people who valued me despite your indifference. But when you chose to skip Emily's funeral, when you dismissed her death as insignificant, you crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." I pulled out a folder containing my documentation. I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to understand if this was an isolated incident or part of a pattern. I think the evidence speaks for itself. I handed them a printed timeline of events dating back to my childhood, with specific examples of their favoritism toward Jason and dismissal of me. Birthdays forgotten because of Jason's soccer tournaments. My college graduation dinner cut short because Jason had a date. The substantial financial support they'd given Jason compared to the token assistance I'd received. My parents looked at the papers with expressions of mingled confusion and defensiveness. "What is this supposed to be?" my father asked. "It's a record of your choices," I replied. "A pattern that culminated in the most painful day of my life, when I buried my daughter alone while you celebrated with Jason." "You weren't alone," my mother protested. "Michael was there and his parents." "Yes, they were. Thank God for them. But my parents, Emily's grandparents, chose a party over her funeral and then lied to the family about why they weren't there." My father's face reddened. "We didn't think it would look good." "No, it wouldn't look good," I agreed. "Because it wasn't good. It was cruel. It was selfish. It was the clearest possible statement of your priorities." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots I'd saved. The Instagram post from Jason's party. Time-stamped during Emily's funeral service. My mother sipping champagne while I was listening to the pastor speak over my daughter's casket. My father laughing with friends while Michael and I were throwing dirt onto our baby's grave. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to see these after the funeral?" I asked, my voice finally breaking. "To know that not only were you absent, but you were celebrating?" My mother's composure finally cracked. "What do you want from us, Abby? We can't change what happened." "No, you can't. But you can acknowledge it. You can stop pretending it was acceptable. You can recognize the pain you caused." "We're sorry you were hurt," my father said stiffly. "That's not an apology," I pointed out. "That's placing the blame on me for being hurt rather than on you for your actions." A tense silence fell over the room. My mother looked at my father, clearly expecting him to fix this situation as he fixed everything with authority and dismissal. But even he seemed to recognize that his usual tactics wouldn't work here. "What is it you want us to say?" my mother finally asked, an edge of frustration in her voice. I pulled out the letter I'd written, my final piece of evidence. "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to listen. This is what I need you to hear." I unfolded the paper and began reading. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this because I need you to understand what your choices have meant to me. When Emily died, my world collapsed. Everything I knew, everything I believed, everything I hoped for was shattered in an instant. The only thing that could have made that pain worse was facing it alone. And that's exactly what your choice forced me to do. When you told me that Emily was just a baby and that Jason's party mattered more, you didn't just miss a funeral. You invalidated her entire existence. You told me that my child, your granddaughter, was disposable, replaceable, unimportant. You told me that my grief was inconvenient. My pain was exaggerated. My loss was negligible compared to Jason's celebration. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, of having my experiences minimized, my achievements overlooked, my needs dismissed. I've spent my entire life trying to earn the love and attention you give Jason freely, never understanding that the problem wasn't me, it was you. I'm not writing this to hurt you or to extract an apology. I'm writing because I need you to know that I see the truth now. I see the pattern. I understand that this will never change because you don't want it to change. And knowing that, I need to protect myself and the memory of my daughter from further harm. For now, I've decided to take a step back from our relationship. I need time and space to grieve Emily without having her existence diminished. I need to heal from not just her loss, but from the additional trauma of your response to it. I need to build a life surrounded by people who value me, and who would have moved heaven and earth to be present on the worst day of my life. If someday you're willing to truly acknowledge what happened, to take responsibility for your actions without excuses or deflections, to commit to change, then perhaps we can begin to rebuild. Until then, this distance is necessary for my well-being and for honoring Emily's memory the way she deserves. When I finished reading, I looked up to see my mother crying silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks. My father sat rigid, his jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something I'd rarely seen: uncertainty. "You can't be serious," he finally said, cutting us off over one missed event. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to my purse. It wasn't one event. It was the final event in a lifetime of events. And I'm not cutting you off permanently. I'm stepping back until you can acknowledge the reality of what happened and commit to change. "This is ridiculous," my father insisted. "Everyone has favorite children. It's natural. We've done everything for you." "Robert," my mother interrupted, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. She was looking at Emily's photo on the table. Really looking at it, perhaps for the first time. "Stop." The room fell silent again. My mother reached for the photo with trembling fingers. "She had your eyes," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "She did." "I never really looked at her," my mother admitted, her voice barely audible. "I was always so busy with Jason's things, with the engagement plans." My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Margaret, don't. Abby's upset. But she'll come around. She always does." "No," I said firmly. "Not this time. This isn't something I can just get over. This is my line in the sand." I stood, gathering my purse. "I've said what I came to say. The ball is in your court now. I hope someday you'll understand what you've done and make different choices. Until then, I need this distance." As I turned to leave, my mother called after me, her voice breaking. "Abby, please don't go like this." I paused at the door. "I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I'm right where I've always been. You're the ones who weren't there when it mattered most." I walked out of their house with a strange mixture of grief and liberation. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands shaking but mind clear. I had spoken my truth. I had stood up for Emily, for myself, for the reality of our experiences. Whatever happened next was up to them. As I drove home, my phone began ringing with notifications. Jason, apparently informed of our confrontation, was sending angry texts, accusing me of upsetting our parents unnecessarily. Several extended family members, however, were sending messages of support. They'd learned the truth about the funeral, either from my direct conversations with them or through the family grapevine. My Aunt Judith's message stood out. "I had no idea, Abby. No idea they chose a party over Emily's funeral. I'm heartbroken for you and ashamed of my brother. Whatever you need, I'm here." By the time I reached home, word had spread through the family. The narrative my parents had carefully constructed was crumbling under the weight of truth. They would need to face not just me, but the judgment of the extended family who had believed their lies. Michael was waiting for me, concern written across his face. "How did it go?" I sank into his arms, emotionally exhausted but oddly peaceful. "I did it. I said everything I needed to say. And now we wait. Either they'll recognize what they've done and try to make amends, or they won't. Either way, I've done what I needed to do for Emily, for myself." That night, I slept better than I had since Emily died. Not because the grief was gone, it would never be gone, but because I'd lifted the additional burden of pretending my parents' behavior was acceptable. I'd honored Emily by insisting her life and death mattered, regardless of what they believed. 6 months after my confrontation with my parents, I stood in the garden we'd planted in Emily's memory. Spring had arrived, bringing with it daffodils and tulips around the small angel statue that marked the center of the space. Michael worked beside me, carefully placing new mulch around the perennials that would bloom throughout the summer. "It's looking beautiful," he said, standing to wrap an arm around my waist. "Emily would have loved playing here." The pain of those words was still sharp, but no longer debilitating. "Yes," I agreed. "She would have." In the months since the confrontation, we had established a new normal. 3 times a week, I attended a support group for parents who had lost children. Twice a month, Michael and I saw Dr. Patrice together, working through our grief as a couple. We had converted Emily's nursery into a memorial room. Not a shrine, but a peaceful space with photos, her favorite toys, and a comfortable chair where we could sit and feel close to her. My relationship with my parents had transformed as well, though not in the way I might have expected. After our confrontation, they had retreated into silence for several weeks. Then, surprisingly, it was my father who reached out, a handwritten letter that arrived exactly 3 months after Emily's death. "Abby," he wrote, "I have never been good with emotions or admitting when I'm wrong. But after reading your letter again and again, after seeing the timeline you created, after hearing from relatives who attended Emily's funeral, I can no longer deny the truth of what you said. We were wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. Not just about the funeral, but about many things over many years. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to try to make amends. But I want you to know that I hear you and I am sorry. Truly sorry. It wasn't a perfect letter. It didn't address everything, but it was the most genuine acknowledgement I had ever received from my father that he had caused me pain." My mother's response came a week later. A small package containing a custom-made ornament with Emily's name, birth date, and a pair of angel wings. The note inside read simply, "I should have been there. I will regret that choice for the rest of my life. I'm so sorry, Abby." These gestures didn't erase the past. They didn't undo the damage or bring Emily back, but they were steps, small, hesitant steps, toward acknowledgement and potential healing. We established careful boundaries. Monthly dinners, initially just my parents and me, later including Michael when he felt comfortable. Ground rules included no dismissing of Emily's memory, no changing the subject when grief surfaced, no comparisons to Jason's life events. Jason himself had been another surprise. After initially reacting with anger to my confrontation with our parents, he had shown up at our door one rainy afternoon in April. "I've been thinking," he said awkwardly, standing on our porch. "About what happened, about Emily's funeral, about everything, really." He had brought a small pink rose bush to plant in Emily's garden. As we dug the hole together, he admitted, "I never really thought about how things looked from your side. Mom and Dad always made such a big deal about everything I did that it seemed normal. I didn't realize what you weren't getting. It wasn't your fault," I told him. "You were a child, too. We were both shaped by their choices." "Still," he said, patting soil around the rose bush, "I should have been at her funeral. She was my niece. I'm sorry, Abby." These moments of acknowledgement didn't erase the grief, but they lightened the additional burden of feeling unseen and unheard. They created space for true healing to begin. As summer turned to fall, I found myself drawn to volunteer work with a local organization supporting parents who had experienced infant loss. My nursing background gave me professional insights, while my personal experience allowed me to connect with parents in a way that textbook knowledge never could. During one support session, a young mother named Rachel broke down describing how her in-laws had suggested she'd just try again, barely a month after losing her son to a congenital heart defect. "They don't understand," she sobbed. "They act like he was replaceable, like any baby would do." I took her hand. "I understand. My parents missed my daughter's funeral for a pool party. They told me she was just a baby, and that my brother's engagement celebration mattered more." Rachel's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I stood up for my daughter's memory," I said. "I made them face what they'd done, and then I focused on healing myself, with or without their understanding." "Did it help?" she asked. "Standing up to them?" I thought about it carefully. It didn't bring Emily back. It didn't erase the pain of burying her alone. But it honored her. It said to the world, her life mattered. Her death mattered. And that helped me heal. Working with these parents became my purpose. Not replacing Emily. Nothing could do that, but creating meaning from the devastation of her loss. Each family I helped was a tribute to her brief life, a way of ensuring that her impact continued. Michael and I began tentatively discussing the possibility of another child, not to replace Emily. We were clear with each other and our therapist about that, but to expand our family. The conversation was fraught with fear and guilt. Would loving another child somehow diminish our love for Emily? Would every milestone with a new baby be shadowed by thoughts of what Emily would have been doing at that age? "I'm scared," I admitted to Michael one night as we sat in Emily's memorial room. "Terrified, actually." "Me too," he said. "But I think Emily would want us to have room in our hearts for another child. Not instead of her. In addition to her." My relationship with my parents continued to evolve slowly. There were setbacks, moments when old patterns emerged, when they slipped into comparing my life unfavorably to Jason's, when they seemed to forget the lessons they claimed to have learned. But there was also growth. My mother began asking about my volunteer work with genuine interest. My father created a small scholarship fund in Emily's name at the children's hospital where I worked. During a family gathering to celebrate my father's birthday, I overheard him talking to a cousin who had recently had a baby. "Treasure every moment," he said with unusual emotion. "Every single moment matters." I learned that lesson too late with my granddaughter. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was progress. On the 1-year anniversary of Emily's death, we held a small remembrance ceremony in our garden. Michael's parents were there, steady and supportive as always. My parents came, bringing flowers and standing awkwardly but respectfully at the edge of the garden. Jason and Stephanie attended briefly, placing a small teddy bear near the angel statue. As we released biodegradable balloons into the sky, I felt Emily's presence, not in a supernatural way, but in the impact she had left on all of our lives. In her 6 short months, she had taught us about unconditional love. In her death, she had taught us about the fragility of life. And in the aftermath, she had taught us about the power of standing up for truth, about setting boundaries, about honoring grief rather than rushing past it. I had lost my daughter. That would always be true. But I had found my voice, my strength, and a new purpose born from that devastating loss. For those of you watching who have experienced a similar loss or betrayal, I want you to know that healing is possible. Not perfect healing, the scars remain, but enough healing to find joy again, to find purpose, to build a life that honors both your loss and your future. If Emily's story has touched you, please consider supporting organizations that help families experiencing infant loss. And if you've faced family betrayal during your darkest moments, know that you're not alone. You have the right to set boundaries, to demand respect for your grief, to insist that your pain matters. Have you ever had to stand up to family during a time of grief? What helped you heal? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's walking this difficult path. Remember, honoring your truth isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the most important thing you can do for yourself and for those you've lost. Be gentle with yourselves. You deserve that kindness. Thank you for watching.